Good afternoon. Welcome to A.R.T Domine, where we can look for families to get stronger,
happier, and holier. So we have today these wonderful, amazing ladies that wrote a wonderful book, Homeschool How-To. And it's Elizabeth Harbaker and Sue Marincel. Hopefully I'm saying right your last name, Sue. Always have a hard time.
Sounds good to me.
These two amazing ladies, they're wonderful Catholic moms and wives. Elizabeth has 5 kids, from a little toddler just learned how to potty train to an adult that went to the Air Force. And Sue has 7 kids. I believe she has 3 at home right now. Everyone has gone away. And in December, one is getting married. And she has a boy that's also discerning his vocation in, I don't know exactly, Sue, you're in Dallas, right?
Fort Worth.
Okay, in Forward to the priest seminary, and 2 in Rome as well, to her daughters. As I can't remember the denomination. What is the denomination they're at, Sue?
Franciscan Family of the Immaculate Heart. They're over in Europe.
So definitely Sue has one heaven, that's for sure, with all these wonderful children that she's giving to God. And so we want to share with you the wonderful book they wrote and their experience as homeschooler moms, that they did homeschooling since kindergarten to all the way to high school, and now they have successful kids. We cannot go over everything in the book, so you can always get it in Amazon. But at the end, I will let you know how you can get a free book. We'll be giving 5 books away, thanks to Elizabeth and Sue, who gave it the books. But we will definitely go dig into the questions. And one of the questions I have for you, because many people are probably wondering what to do this year with education and their families and their kids. And one of the things is, what is the difference between homeschooling and school at home with the pandemic? Because it's 2 different things, and people can think it's the same thing and they can feel overwhelmed. So Sue, would like to answer that question, Sue?
Yeah, I've had several neighbors who are having a very difficult time with the pandemic school, and that's simply because it's crisis managed. You know, they've come up with the idea of how to do it on a very short notice, and to their credit, it's a very difficult thing to do. Mm-hmm. But they're thinking that this is homeschooling, and a lot of them are not liking it. And it's not really homeschooling. It's actually trying to do your public school homework at home is basically what it is. So homeschooling is a lot more comprehensive as far as, you know, learning everything within the context of the family, and including your spiritual life and faith in that, and your physical activity and your mental schooling, your academics, all in one package in the home, instead of going away to another place and giving that responsibility to other people to educate your kids.
Thank you,
Elizabeth.
Yeah, I mean, I think from what I've heard from some family and friends who've dealt with the distance schooling is that it's just not very efficient. I think that's one of the great things about homeschooling, is that you can be a lot more efficient with your time. Your kids get to kind of have some say in what you learn about. You're not just at the mercy of what someone else has chosen as far as your curriculum and your subjects that you study. So you get to kind of be imaginative and creative with the way that your family goes about your day, as how you use your time and the things that you learn about. I love being the captain of my own ship. I think that's one of the perks of homeschooling. And, you know, we get to think it through every year, like what's going to be best for the kids this year and what's going on in the family. We get to tweak things and make it better, change it up a little bit. So I don't have somebody else telling me what to do and how to do it. And we're not stuck on screens all day and dealing with technology issues. I think that was a big hassle for a lot of people. Lots of passwords and, you know, websites to know about, and trying to log in, and kids sharing computers. You know, you will have to do a little bit of online things sometimes, especially once you get into middle school and high school, but it doesn't have to be sitting at a screen all day. It's a lot more rich and beautiful of a lifestyle.
Right, and actually, one thing that has helped me a lot when I started homeschooling, because I didn't homeschool since the beginning. Actually, Elizabeth and Sue has helped me very much when I started homeschooling. So thank you, Elizabeth and Sue. And one of the things I realized is that now that I homeschool, I have the privilege to really pray for each of my children and see what is that they need for each year in education and in virtues, and I can apply those during the day to make sure that what they need is being done at home. So that's one benefits that I really realized that. And another question people might be having is why you choose to homeschool. And now that you have grown-ups and away, graduated, if you chose that the reason you did it was has that choice, do you see that it's been accomplished? Now you can tell us your experience, because we can start home, like I start homeschooling and thinking, oh, maybe it will come true, but I'm not sure yet because my kids are not gone yet. But yours have, so you can tell us if it has been accomplished over the reason why you started homeschooling.
So one of my main reasons for homeschooling was because my experience of public school was that it was a lot of wasted time where I could have been doing something else, where I was stuck in a classroom doing work that wasn't very interesting or wasn't teaching me anything new. So that was one of the things I wanted my kids to have, the ability to just zoom ahead and look into subjects that they were really interested in and that were really important to us. And that has definitely been accomplished. And also, we did it also for family time, because my husband had a weird work schedule and the kids wouldn't have been able to see their dad much if they'd been in school because he worked weekends. And that has definitely been a really big asset in how homeschooling has changed our life, is that the kids are so close, our family is so close. And I compare it to, when I was growing up with kids going in different directions all day and hardly seeing each other, even at supper. My kids are really close still as adults when they get together. They just love each other. They're a real team. And so that's been really great. And then the things that have been above my expectations were our ability to learn our faith and grow as a family together. And I can honestly say that teaching my kids the faith has taught me the faith, because I did not know my faith when I started. But when you read that Bible story for the 10th time to that little toddler, you will know that Bible that Bible story. You will never forget it, right? Right, Elizabeth?
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm a convert, and I would say that that's also been a great perk, is that as I teach my kids things in their workbooks, I mean, something in their spelling book might have caught my attention, and I think, oh, I didn't know that, because I didn't grow up Catholic. I became Catholic when I was actually a senior in high school. And so, so many new things, so many prayers that as I teach them, I get to learn. We're learning together. Actually, the reason we started homeschooling was because my kids are a little bit far apart, and about 3.5 years apart, my oldest two. And just about the time when little sister would be ready to play with big brother and having so much fun together, we'd be sending him off to kindergarten all day. And I just thought, oh no, this is not going to work. We don't want him to be gone all day. They play so well together, and now he's going to be gone. And she's going to be lonely. And so I just thought, I really want them to have that strong relationship, that sibling friendship. And I thought, I see other people homeschooling. We had some friends who homeschooled. I thought, I think we can do this. It seemed very doable. So we just kind of took it baby steps. And as we learned, it just got better and better. And now I see my kids do have a really good relationship. Even with my son being gone in the Air Force, we talk every day. He calls his sister, he calls his little brothers, he wants to check in, and they all love getting to hear all the updates and that kind of thing. So I would say, yes, it's been accomplished. Their relationships are really strong. They have a great friendship, even as they've grown up, and we get to just spend so much time together. And having kids out of the house now, I realize what a gift that is. It goes by so quickly. And that time is such a gift with each other.
You're right. And some people can be saying, well, that sounds wonderful. They're together, the family is good. But some people can think, well, yeah, but what about the social time? Or what about all this misconception they can have at homeschooling about the kid being shy, not having friends, or not socializing, not learning enough, or not being ready for college. I mean, there's many different things we can talk about. But I think one main thing is socializing. People can be afraid of the kid will not be socialized. So maybe you can help us. I know you're talking about it in the book as well about high school, all those. We can't talk everything right now. We'll be answering questions if you have a question specifically so we can answer you. But maybe you can ask us or you can help us out, Elizabeth and Sue, to let us know exactly about the socialization part.
The socialization part in the book is actually from my own experience. And that really happened to me. I really went and looked up what socialization was. It's the acquisition or the acquiring of the beliefs, attitudes, and values of your peer group. So the big question to me is, do you want them acquiring the beliefs, attitudes, and values of the people they run into in school that are all the same age as them? And what are they going to pick up there? Versus being socialized in the family with all different ages, learning good manners, learning, where a parent can correct them if they're going, in the wrong direction. And I think we see that in the homeschool kids that have graduated, that we see very stable, friendly kids who know how to talk to people of all ages. And they're not as likely to get into trouble with their peers because they acted like adults. They act like they're team members in a family. They don't act like they're members of a pack of all the same age. What do you think, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I think when it comes to social activities and opportunities, there's a lot more times that I actually have to say no to things because there's so much to choose from. We actually sometimes need to be home in order to homeschool, we can't go and do every single, field trip and play date and park day and party and everything going on. We can't possibly say yes to it all. There's just so much out there with our homeschool group and with our church, with friends, that we live close by to. We live kind of out in the country, but we still call it kind of our neighborhood friends, that live in our little town. There's a lot, and that's so wonderful. I get to see other moms. My husband gets to hang out with the dad, sometimes if it's a family thing. All the kids have different kids to play with of different ages. And it's really amazing to see how the kids they don't have that self-consciousness that I know that I grew up with when I was, especially like the middle school years. I think, kids go through a lot of that. I have seen my kids just blossom and not have to deal with quite so much of that because they're all just together and they have great friendships and they have so many opportunities to be around so many great people. And that just rubs off on you, when you're around really good friends, you become a better person. And I think that's been true with me as an adult. I've learned so much from the moms in our homeschool group, but then I see that for my kids too. They just have really great role models.
Actually, when I started just starting homeschooling, I was like, yes, no, can I do this or not at the beginning? One of the things that attracted me a lot was I went to one of the events of homeschooling and all the kids were playing. And one thing that even my husband told me, look at the teenagers. I'm like, okay. They were so natural, not with the stress of just me. And when the little one or a young one came, actually one of my kids went to them and said, like, he was like, hey, I want to play with you guys. And I thought, well, let's see. And they acted like, yeah, let's play together. I'm like, oh, but he's whatever age he was, I don't know, he was 6. And it was like they right away, they just like, hey, we're all together. We're going to play with you. And then they would put the little ones. And then they were talking to the older ones, they would talk to the older ones. And I was like, wow, that really brought my attention how all the kids just were able to socialize with little adults or teenagers. And the teenagers were very natural and very lovable with all ages. And that really attracted my attention, especially for me.
Mm-hmm.
Another question that people can have at this moment can be like, well, that sounds incredible. However, I don't think I can homeschool because there can be different questions. It can be, well, I only have one kid. Maybe it's not good for them. Or I have a special need kid. I can't do that for that kid. Or I'm a single parent, or we both work, so we have to be working. So maybe you can help us. I know we can't do all the answers. They're in the book, but if you can help us to see if people can homeschool, if everyone can homeschool, or what suggestions do you have for that?
Well, I'm down to one kid now, so I can answer the one kid question. Of course you can homeschool with one kid, and you can give them a lot more attention than you would when you're homeschooling 5, or whatever. They can really zoom ahead because they've got one-on-one tutoring, all day if they need it. And as far as being a teacher, you don't have to be a teacher, because a teacher is learning classroom management. We don't do that. It's more like tutoring, and you help your kids. It's more like what parents do with their kids in the evening to help them with their homework. Is exactly, I think most parents don't realize that they're really homeschooling because their kids are gone to school all day. What did they learn? Well, I don't know, not much, but when they come home, they have to do a bunch of homework and the parents are helping them. Well, you might as well have been doing the homework all day and then had the evening off, to socialize with your friends or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that you can, there's always going to be a hurdle that you can think of, that, maybe it's that, the issue with working, trying to do this on one income, or trying to homeschool while both parents work, or, there's a baby on the way, or a special needs child. I think, in that case, you could probably give a lot of extra attention. But you can also receive services from the school district for the students. So speech therapy and occupational therapy and different things that they need. You can still tap into those resources, and you just manage it yourself from home, and you're in charge of all their other subjects, and they're just there to support you. But I think if you have these hurdles, whatever it is for your particular situation, to pray about it, to talk with your spouse, and get to a point where you can really open your mind to creative solutions. And we suggest in the book to join a homeschool group right away. I think you can even join a homeschool group right away if you're just exploring homeschooling, if you're not even absolutely for sure. A great way to know what's going on in your area and to get ideas is to just go ahead and join the group and tell them, say, hey, I'm looking into this. I'm not sure what we're doing next year, but I want to just see what it's like and see what you have going on in your area. And then you can ask questions. You might ask, like, does anybody work? How do you do this in work? Or how do you do this on one income? Or how do you do this when you're having a baby? What do you do with babies and toddlers? And get ideas, ask other moms who've been there. And those might become your best friends and the people you're going to call on a crazy day and say, what do I do? Everything's going crazy and I need help. So you need to make those connections right away, because your situation is unique. We can't tell you what to do, but I'm sure that there's a wonderful solution that will bring you a lot of peace and that will be good for your particular family. You just have to look for it. You have to look for the ideas and solutions that will be right for you.
Right. Thank you. And actually, I'm going to pause a little bit and see if we have any questions, because I believe there's one question. I want to thank people who are watching. One, I think, is Sergio and Rula, as well as Margie, Nancy Kramer, Joanna, Jose. So thank you for watching. And one of the questions, it says, hi ladies, you're amazing. Thank you for doing this. I'm excited about this book you wrote. I can't wait to read it. How do you juggle different levels of education? That's the question. How do you juggle different levels of education?
So I think maybe they mean like kids at different grade levels, maybe?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
what, different levels. I think
yes. So I'll tell you what I do real quick, and then Sue, you jump in. So my kids are kind of spread apart. And so I'll often have like preschool, elementary, middle school, or elementary, middle school, high school, all going on at the same time. Like a one-room schoolhouse, which is actually really neat. It can get a bit overwhelming sometimes when I feel pulled in every direction, but I kind of think that'd be happening if my kids went to school anyway. I think that's just the nature of motherhood, is you kind of feel pulled in every direction. So I make sure that I give the little people their attention first and some time to kind of do school. And maybe that's just coloring pages or singing songs or something like that. It could be something really simple. And then I just set aside a certain time each day that I meet with each kid. So that kind of gives me some accountability. Like I know every day at 10 o'clock is when I sit down with my fourth grader and we go over her work that she's done, during the morning, and we talk about what she's going to do next. And I grade math with her, and we just sit down and look at what she's done. And if she has questions or something like that, I know next at 11 o'clock, I'm going to work with my middle schooler or my early high schooler. And I'm going to sit down and look at, okay, what essay did you write? Where are you at on this part? And then maybe in the afternoon is when I would work with an upper level high school kid who'd been working most of the time independently. And I'm just checking in. We're going to grade chemistry, we're going to grade math, and we're going to look and see where you're at on these online classes that you're taking, and just kind of go over and just touch base. So that's how I do it, because I need a schedule to keep me accountable. Otherwise, weeks will go by and I'll be like, where are we at? And who's doing what? And what lesson are you on? And I don't want that to happen. I really want to know what's going on and have those great conversations with them about what they're studying. So that's why I give myself that little timetable. And of course it gets messed up. It's not exact, but I kind of know these blocks of time in our day that I have set aside for what I need to be doing and who I need to be tending to. And of course the toddler gets in the middle of things and it's crazy, like you're trying to teach a reading lesson and the 2-year-old is needing something or being very loud or whatever. And you just go, is this impossible? Yeah, it almost is impossible, but sometimes motherhood seems impossible, right? But we keep going and it gets better. And then you have these beautiful moments where everybody's sitting together and reading and laughing, and it's great.
Yeah, and some subjects you can do together, like they can all be doing world history at the same time, and then what you expect for them as far as work would be different depending on their level. And one of the advantages of that too, I think, is that the smaller kids actually hear and watch and learn while you're teaching an older kid. I had one of my kids, I didn't even have to teach her how to read because she picked it up from the kid before. She just watched those lessons and already knew how to read. I'm like, yay! I don't have to do it, because that's a big job teaching someone to read. Just takes some one-on-one time, So
Yeah.
the older kids, that independent working she was talking about is very valuable skill for when they go off to college, because they've already learned pretty much how to read a book and teach themselves. And I will say that the homeschool books that are out there require generally very little teacher instruction, as far as you don't have to do this lecture or give, a big lesson, read a big lesson to them. It's already in the book. All the explanations are great. They're nice and clear. They have lots of examples, and then they have the kid do the work. And what the kid will come to me for is maybe some help with a difficulty with a certain kind of problem or a certain kind of writing or whatever. But usually they can learn how to teach themselves by the time they get to high school. So it's mostly the little kids that we have to really, really sit down for a long period of time with and teach them things. The older kids are pretty independent learning kids by the time they get to high school.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your experience too?
Where you're saying, yeah, one thing that I think is interesting to see that you were saying, both of you, is taking that time with each child, because whatever it is, 10 minutes or 15 or 30, depending on the child's need, right, or the child's temperament, I think they're looking forward to that, because even if they don't have any questions or they're doing fine, like in my case, they're like, oh, it's my time with mommy, whatever it is. Like, so it's like special, it's like I can ask questions or do things with them, or that gives them that time with mom or dad, if dad steps in too, because so many times they step in and they like that. And as well, the little ones or the young ones can help the little ones, and that even gives them a creativity, because in my house, like, oh, I can't wait to teach my little one. Actually, sometimes they fight because they all want to teach the little one. Like, then I have to divide them. Okay, you teach reading, you teach this, to give them something, because they all want to teach something to that person, which I think that's great. With that. Let me see if there's any other question before I ask other questions, because I want to make sure there's questions here to be answered to. I don't believe so. I don't see any other questions. If anyone has any questions, please write them down and we'll be trying to answer them. So now another question I have that I think many people might have is, actually we're talking about the subjects, because if you can say that if you're just starting homeschooling, or even a few years, like myself, at the beginning, it took me a while, because I had to teach every single thing I taught when I was a teacher, because there was a teacher in the school. I was like, well, even if you were not a teacher, you're thinking, well, all these subjects in school that were taught. So I need to make sure I teach every single thing in school to make sure I'm doing the right thing. So for homeschoolers, do you have to teach every single subject? And if not, what are the 4 or 3 subjects you need to teach that you wrote in the book? If you can give us suggestions for that.
Okay, I put a framework just to get people started, and that was reading, writing, math, and religion. And religion, if you're not particularly religious, you could put ethical trading or good living or other kinds of character or virtue building in that category. And then if you start with those, then you can start adding as you go along in the year. And for real small kids, it's very simple just to do small science projects, go for nature walks, start a journal, start a leaf collection, do those type of things. When you get into junior high, you can start learning, say, maybe the vocabulary of science with a lot of little experiments or something. And then when they get to high school, they'll get into some really, harder, more serious courses on these things. But it's a general process, and you don't have to load them up and say, okay, this year, I think Texas requires you to do social studies or something like that. In elementary years, for example, you'd want to do some social studies and maybe some government in high school. So each state would have some requirements that you are required to do, but do the basics first. And then you can add little bits of those other things. And a lot of that can be around the house, learning how to measure in the kitchen, learning physics by making things, out of building blocks or whatever. They learn a lot of things, a lot of lessons just from everyday life. Even if it's helping dad in the garage with tools or whatever, they'll learn a lot.
Right.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, I think there's something very satisfying about spending just some really focused and maybe not too terribly long, but just some focused attention every day or a few days a week on basic things, like in elementary years, the basic math facts, the reading, getting really, the reading fluency up and getting the kid to independent reading, getting the child to, learn the basics, of maybe some history that you're reading. It doesn't have to be, maybe it's memory work if that's what you like to do with your kids, but just kind of understanding the story of what's going on and what has gone on in the world. And a lot of that you can do as a family, by listening. We love to listen to audiobooks in the car. And so that really knocks out history for elementary years. So I think the focused attention on the basics can make the most difference, especially in the elementary years, to pave the way to kind of making it a little bit easier in the middle school years. Once they get into some of the harder math, they're not struggling with just the basic facts anymore. Or if you've really spent that time laying the groundwork of just how to write a good sentence, that's not too hard. And most people, even who haven't gone to school to be a teacher, they could teach a kid how to write a pretty good sentence. Hopefully, all of the texting isn't intervening in all of our grammar and all of that. But we can help kids do some really basic things that will pave the way to make life easier when they get a little bit bigger. Because if they can write a good sentence, they can write a good paragraph, right? And then they can write a good essay. But it's not all at once. It's slow and gentle. And it's just that focused attention every day on little things that
And
will make.
if they read well and if they can do their basic math, that makes their higher courses a lot easier.
Mhm.
For them as they go along. And if you really look at what they test you to get into college, it's reading, writing, and math. So there you
Right.
go.
Yeah, and all of the subjects, I mean, if you think about it, when you look at an elementary school, you have art and music and, all of these different things going on. A lot of that happens naturally in a family, and you don't really have to set aside a course for it. If I'm teaching a kid to read, there isn't a lot of time in the day to be doing some kind of very intricate art projects or some hands-on like science experiments and that kind of thing. They're going to go catch frogs and they're going to, catch ladybugs and dig up worms and there's science, right? And we're going to look up some books at the library on lightning bugs in the summer. And we're going to look up, all of these, rabbit trails that kids go on fairly naturally. They're just curious. And all you have to do is kind of fill in the blanks with some of that, with some great library books and some exploration outside. And there's a great science program for you. It doesn't have to be so intense. Because really, when you're teaching somebody to read and managing, maybe a toddler at the same time, and then, you've got kids who are still not quite independent readers and need a lot of help from mom, there isn't a ton of time to dedicate to these really, all these other really intricate subjects, but you can still dabble in them and really have a lot of fun. Maybe it's like you do a few drawing lessons online altogether, or you get a drawing book. My kids love like those animal drawing books. And then they draw cards for grandma and things like that. And so they're getting art. We love art books and we love going to museums and that kind of thing. But I don't spend a lot of time in elementary years focused on art. Hey, but if you're an artist, if that's your thing, then that's what you should do with your kids, because that's what you love and you want to share that with them and you have that flexibility. So I think there's just a lot of leeway, and you really should look at what your state recommends or what they require, and kind of, try to focus on that. I know, like in my state, we have to do, I think, health and fire safety. Well, that's great. We can do that, but we don't need to buy a curriculum for it, right? We can do that with a library book and some hands-on things like let's test the smoke detectors and make a plan to get out of the house. So it doesn't have to be as, it's not as overwhelming as we're going to spend, a whole semester on, fire safety. It can be a lot simpler than that. And I think if you look at it, a lot of things just naturally come about with kids who are playing, like Sue was talking about with the physics. I know I have kids who love, popsicle sticks, duct tape, cardboard. These are things that I couldn't even come up with on my own, and they are creating these things, and then the project doesn't work. And why? Well, there's a great physics lesson, right? And this, my kid is 7. It's like, we're doing physics, there's science right there. And I didn't even have to buy a workbook for it, right? And he wouldn't sit through a workbook anyway. So I think kids playing and using their imagination, and that takes, I think, a little bit of a leap of faith, because if you've been in the school system or the way you were raised, if you were in public school and you think everything needs a workbook, everything needs a 45-minute time slot in the day, if you're 7 subjects that you're going to study all day, or if you think that it needs to have some sort of paper turned into the teacher, that kind of work. Letting it be something more fluid and a little bit more natural is kind of hard, but it's also really beautiful. And you'll see that your kids really dive into things that you couldn't even have come up with if you tried.
Kids they gain a love for learning too. And, like you said, exploring in science, exploring nature, they gain that love for their education, because their education is fun, and they can go off on like you said, a rabbit trail down. They can study worms for a month if they want, and they can learn a lot, and they can write a lot about it, and they can do other things about it. They can draw about it, and they can, discuss it and all these things and read books. So we can we have the flexibility to allow them to do that, to explore something that they're really interested in. And I think that makes their outlook towards education very bright and very positive, as opposed to, I have to go sit in a chair, all day from 8 to 3 or whatever.
And
So
no, I think it was a very good point, Sue and Elizabeth. Right now you're saying love to study, because I think that's one of the things, objectives I've talked to moms who homeschool, is that they want to make sure their kids love to study, they love to adventure. And I see that a lot with my kids at the beginning. It was like, well, I need to do this, I have to do it. But when it's more, I want to do it, I want to learn, then they will have that when they grow up. So even if they didn't learn something that you thought they had to learn because you were worried about it, it will come up because they will search for it. So it will come in the moment, and you have to let God do that as well. Like, that freedom that God can do that. If as a mom, you're worried that they didn't learn something specifically, and think as a mom, we can worry they didn't do all the things they were supposed to be doing that you think, that they're required. Like for me, science, like you were saying, science was like, oh, science, I'm not very good science. And now one of my kids in the garage, I was like, what are you doing with that box? Like, I'm putting all the things, like trash stuff or things that I'm throwing away because I'm going to do science projects with it. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that sounds like a good thing. I'm like, I've never thought of that. So he's doing all these science projects that, yeah, because I really haven't bought things or do things, but he's like, well, I want to investigate and I do it myself. So those kind of things, I think it's like you're saying, it's very important that the kids love to learn, and that's beautiful. And you were talking about one thing, Elizabeth, you said about, I think both of you said the state law. So one of the questions can be, is it illegal to homeschool? And how do you know that? Because I know every state is different. So if you can just briefly tell us a little bit about that. And then I'll look for more questions if people have more questions.
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. You can look up the laws about homeschooling for your particular state. It is legal in all the states. You just need to find out what's required. You can go to Homeschool Legal Defense Association. They have a great list by state of what is required and what the laws are for you. And I think you shouldn't get too terribly emotional about it or too intimidated, because I think sometimes we do feel that way. Like there's this authority out there, this school district or the governor or the school education board, and they have this authority over us. Well, kind of. I mean, we have authority over our children, right? And it's our job to educate them. And so we find out what we need to do, and then we do it. And that's it. It's not complicated. You just see what's required for your state and check off your little boxes. You don't have to do more than what's required. Just give them the essential information, or maybe there's nothing that you need to do. You could luck out and live in Texas, right?
Yeah, in Texas, we don't have to do anything. Yeah.
Yeah, so just look it up and find out, and then go through. There's often some great resources if you connect with a homeschool group in your state. They can kind of walk you through it. I know that happened with me when I moved to Ohio. I found some great forms that I could just print off, fill out what I needed to fill out, and send it in. I take it to my superintendent's office and drop it off like with a smile and a little conversation, and just, that's what I have to do. I don't really enjoy doing it because I used to live in Texas, and I love the idea of just doing my own thing and not having to report in. And but I do it, and then we move on, and I don't even think about it for the rest of the year. So I know really who's in charge of my kids' education, and it's not the superintendent. It's me. It's my husband, and God has given us what we need to take care of them. And we'll do what we need to do for the state we live in. But then we're going to move on and just do what we need to do for our family.
Thank you. And with that, I have a question here for Amanda. Thanks, Amanda, for watching. Amanda says, I'm planning on homeschooling this year because of COVID. How do I make sure that she won't fall behind when she goes back? She's in 5th grade this coming year, and she was going to Catholic school. How do I make sure what we do at home will be accepted? That's her question. I know we can help with that.
Okay, I would think locally, you have to look at your local conditions. I would even talk to the people at the Catholic school. I think they understand, because of the COVID thing, that a lot of people are hesitant to put their kids in group situations for one reason or another. And there's a good possibility that you could ask those same questions to the Catholic school people if you think you're going to put your kid back in the Catholic school, because they might have a certain kind of math flow or a certain kind of flow in some other course like science, where they want your student to do a certain thing in that grade level. So I would check with the people locally to see, how that's going to work for flowing them back in, and whether you need to use any particular courses so that they don't fall behind in whatever subject it is that they require in that grade at that school. So it's very school specific, and it's very local specific. And mainstreaming is an issue you really have to work on a local level, because some places are very amenable to you putting the kids back in, and some locations make it very kind of rather tough for you to get your kids back in at a certain point. They might have them test on certain things or whatever to get back into that grade level. So it just depends. You have to check with the school district or the Catholic school that you're going to put them in, and check and see what their rules are and what they would recommend.
Yeah, I think that's something that you could also ask if you're part of an online or in-person homeschool group for your local area. You could ask somebody, have you ever homeschooled and then put your child back into public or private school, and how did it go? And just see what kind of information they have for your specific area. They might have some good input for you about testing or something like that that might be required in order to get back into the school. Or maybe there's nothing. Maybe there's nothing that needs to be done, and you're free to send your child back whenever you're more comfortable with it, and there won't be a whole lot to do. So it's just I think it's worth asking around several different people. Ask the school, ask maybe the homeschool group of people who maybe have done that. It's pretty common. I mean, I know there's a lot of people in the homeschool groups that I've been a part of that they might have one kid at home and one kid at a private school, and one kid doing a co-op or something, and so they have different things for their family. And so a lot of moms have been out there who've done what you're doing right now, and they can help you navigate.
And actually, I can also help with that question, because when I started homeschooling, I thought I was going to put him back in school at one moment. And so at the school they used to go to, private Catholic school. And at that school, I went to the teacher and I asked to see what curriculum they were using for math, writing, things like that, which before I didn't even knew, but this time made me know, which is good. So I was like, oh, okay, they're using this. I got their materials and did that at home with the kid to make sure he was, and for him it was easy because he was used to that curriculum. So it wasn't hard for him. He's like, oh, okay, I'm used to this curriculum. So it was just gradually doing that with them. And then at the end of that year, I think after I homeschooled 2 years, he went to a charter school, and that school did not require anything. Just I believe just maybe a little test to make sure the kid was in the level, to make sure what grade he would go to, and that was it. But so I think, like you're saying, maybe the school will say you just have to know this, and or maybe just we'll test him or her before he comes to school knowing these things, and that will make it very easy for you not to worry about it so much as he goes back.
I think there may be a chance that a lot of kids are going to get behind, whether they're in public or private school. They basically missed maybe half a semester, and there was all the transition to the online things, and the transition as people figured out what was going on. And then now who knows what will happen in the fall. So I don't know. I think as a homeschooling parent, you may be able to manage it a little bit better, making sure that your child isn't getting behind. Whereas there may be a lot of that going on, just as kids try to transition to a different type of learning, I think it will be common to find some holes that are there, even if they're going to school. So you can probably do a better job at home of taking care of the basics, and keeping them on track, without having to deal with all the transition of what's going to be going on and how things are going to be run for your particular school.
Right. Thank you.
And I think it'll probably make the administrators a little more flexible on allowing kids to come back in at a grade level, because so many kids are being pulled out because of the virus situation. So I think the testing that they usually do for grade level doesn't usually include a lot of picky little facts, like maybe science facts or something like that. It's more usually a general test of more reading and writing and things like that, just to make sure that they're intellectually able to handle that level, not necessarily specific things about, say, science or something like that.
Right, that's true. And it is something special too that maybe they will be flexible, because a lot of schools that semester, this last semester, a lot of kids were not able to have everything normal, and to adjust, it takes time to adjust to something as it is. And then right away, summertime. And in summer, there's nothing that they're doing. Well, of course, they get a little bit more behind to catch up, right? So that takes a little bit more. And I think they know that. I think that's, as the school district, they probably know that as well. Let me see if I have other questions, we can go on. Oh, another question from Margie. She says, how do I lead my child towards working independently what are expectations for early elementary? Her kids are in elementary, all of them. And she's wondering how to lead my child towards working independently, if any expectations. And I think we talked about it a little bit, but maybe we can ask her, or we can answer her question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I have kids in early elementary right now, and it just really varies on what they're able to do, partly based on their reading ability. All kids kind of come to that point where they're reading independently and fluently on their own at a different age and develop different grade level. So I try not to stress about whether they're working independently or not, especially at the younger elementary grades. By about maybe third grade or so, I expect to be able to give them a little something to do while I walk away and then come back and check on them. They can probably handle something like that. And it's just little small things. And maybe it's just an issue of the placement, like where is the child working? Is the child working in an area where you can kind of keep tabs, or is the child working in a place that's getting really distracted and that kind of thing? So you might just get creative with where you're homeschooling, and that you can kind of keep track of a couple of kids at the same time, just to make sure everybody's still, if you know that they're capable of doing something on their own. But I know for me, I really have to sit with my kindergarten, first, second graders. I have to sit with them and do the bulk of the work next to them. While they're writing their spelling words out, I'm right there in case they're getting messed up, or if they're writing letters backwards still, you want to catch it quick and just say, oh, look, that's a D, not a B, and get them back on track. And that's actually the beauty of homeschooling, is that you're right there. It's really quick feedback. And it's not like they're going to write the whole thing out incorrectly, turn it into the teacher, and a few days later they get it back all marked up in red, So hopefully, when you do have those times when you have to sit with your child and do a lot of work with them while they're not working independently, you can be catching things that they, math facts that they're, consistently getting mixed up on, or writing, something with writing or spelling. And then of course with reading, I know I sit with my kids and read a lot. I read out loud to them, they read out loud to me. So that's a lot of one-on-one time. And of course there's other kids in the room, and there's the baby or the toddler there with us. So they're all kind of together. But I don't have a lot of expectation for them to start working independently until they're probably at least third, probably even closer to fourth or fifth grade, where they can manage a lot of their schoolwork on their own, and they're really confident readers by then.
I have a friend who taught second grade for over 30 years. And she said, you have to realize that they have a very short attention span too. And they can't sit down and do, 30 minutes or 45 minutes of work all at once, but that's just not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
They need to move at least every 20 minutes. They need to get up and do a little song with hand motions, or go do a chore, or go jump on the trampoline or something. Have to break it up and, take some breaks, because the little kids just don't have that long attention span. They really need to move in between things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also one thing that helps, like we said, Elizabeth, as well, the setup of the house or where they're working. I think that's very important for parents to know that, because they have a lot of small children, like very close together. It might be hard for them to be with them at the same time. Like you say, a toddler and a baby, and maybe a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old. And maybe if the younger kid, like even the 3-year-old, can be working in a puzzle. Or even one, actually, I remember when my baby was born, Elizabeth, you gave me a little toy. It was homemade, and I loved it. It was like a can thing, and then and in the middle, you just put things inside. And I was like, oh, that's a great idea. And you just give it something like that. So the little baby or the toddler just, putting things inside, just playing while you are able to be with the other child. And so the 2-year-old or even the 1-year-old is actually doing homeschooling, because he's doing practical things with our hands. And then you can be with the other child. So there's something to be exactly that you're with them 100% without any distractions, or not having the other ones doing exactly word writing. So I think that will help them to know that it's flexible, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if there's another question. Yeah, somebody was saying, thank you, Nancy. She was saying also, if they're concerned about being behind, that there are some curriculums, and it's true, some curriculums that are more set, like accreditable curriculums that some families might like that. So you know that the child is doing what is asked according to that curriculum.
Yes, there are. We covered that in the book. There are curriculums that you can purchase that are accredited, meaning that it's certified like a regular school, and you'll get a transcript and all that. And sometimes that's easier to get the kids back in if you're thinking on mainstreaming. Although a lot of people found out once they start homeschooling, they like it so much that they'll actually stay out and just keep homeschooling. And those curriculums also are great things to look at, even if you're not going to use their curriculum. You can look at what they're teaching, and you can buy some of their books. I've used books from several different curriculum companies. I take, maybe a science book from this one, a math book from that one, an English book from the other one. And because we know that those books that they're selling in their 5th grade package are appropriate for approximately a 5th grader. So you can kind of judge on your kid, are they ahead of 5th grade or not in English? Well, maybe they'll need a 6th grade book. And you can look at those books and see if that's appropriate for your kid. And that also tells you what an average 5th grader should be taking too. So it's a good way to kind of pick your books out, is to look at what the box curriculums have and what the accredited curriculums have, and realize that some of the accredited ones also are a little more rigorous as far as what they demand out of the kids for how much work they're doing every day. So it just kind of depends where you're going with that as a family and what your goals are. If you're trying to get into Princeton or Yale or somewhere and that's your goal, then maybe you need to work them a little harder. We didn't set that as our kind of goal. We set our goal as for the kids to be well adjusted and know their basic subjects and be able to pursue their dreams and be independent and get into any program or whatever that they would like to get into to be qualified to do that. Elizabeth?
Yeah, I think don't underestimate the customer service at a lot of the different homeschool providers, the curriculum providers. So if you are looking into a particular program that you hear about, you can call them and ask them the questions that you have. I think particularly right now, a lot of the curriculum providers are doing a lot to accommodate all of the new homeschooling families and the people who have questions about homeschooling. I've just seen a lot of resources out there that the different companies are providing. So don't hesitate to just call around and ask questions to them. You might be surprised at how much help they can be in navigating, what kind of things to look for if you are going to send your child back to school, or if you're worried about them getting behind, or what to expect in a typical homeschool day, or any challenges that you're facing. Bring those up to the company, and that will also kind of give you an idea of what you can expect throughout the year. If you're using their books and you're coming across a problem or something, or you're coming across some kind of difficulty that you're having with their lesson plans or something like that, how does it work when you call them? Do you get good customer service and you get good answers and support? There are some even accredited programs where you kind of have like a mentor, like a homeschooling mom mentor who helps you throughout the homeschooling year. So you can check in, and they check in with you on all of your kids and their work and questions that you might have, and you can ask them really specific things. So those are some great programs if you're worried about things like that. So I think the main thing is that right now, if you're looking into this and you're trying to get information, to just really try to see what's out there, because a lot of times what right now is kind of the tip of the iceberg, and there's a lot more that you don't know about, that you haven't seen or heard about. And so give yourself a little set period of time to kind of look into things, and then at the end of that time frame, just kind of dive in and choose something based on the information that you've gathered and the experiences that you've had with calling different companies or looking at their books online or asking friends, even new homeschooling friends that you've met with your group. Say, hey, I'm looking into this program. Can I come and actually look at your books? Because there's something about holding a book in your hands and seeing what it's like that really gives you an idea of how, if it's going to fit well with your family. And sometimes you can just look at those books and go, yeah, my kid can do this. This is where we need to be. This is what we need to be doing. And if you do run into challenges that you think your child is behind in something, maybe they were going to be behind in that area in public or private school anyway. And maybe this is the year to really focus on it. I know sometimes you get overwhelmed thinking that your child is behind in something, and it can be overwhelming. But it's surprising how many times it's just a few minutes of really focused attention on that subject every day, or even like maybe 3 or 4 days of the school week. If you set aside and you set a timer, you say, okay, we're going to work for 10 minutes on this one skill that you're really weak in. Just those 10 minutes, try to, I think Mother Teresa said that God asks us to be faithful, not successful, right? And I tell my kids that all the time, like, it's okay if you're not successful while we're working on this. We're just going to be faithful to practicing for 10 minutes a day. And it's amazing what happens with that. So most people, when you say to them, could you do something for 5 or 10 minutes a day to get your kid back on track? They're like, oh yeah, I can do that. That's not quite so overwhelming, but that's usually all that it takes if your child is behind in something. And that focused attention that you have throughout the year can make a huge difference in their education and your relationship with them, connecting with them on a daily basis on something and getting through hard stuff, teaching your kids that they can do hard things. I think that's a big lesson in homeschooling that we sometimes underestimate. Even just like multiplication tables or something like that. Like, you can do hard things, you can do it. And this is how, they learn how to solve those problems.
And actually, in the book, in the back of this book, it has a lot of resources that we haven't mentioned here because it's going to be hard, but they have a lot of resources here, very practical, that you can always look, and the websites or resources or curriculums that you can look that can help you to start if you don't know yet anything in that area. And I know we're running out of time, but I'm going to see if there's any more questions. And something you said, Elizabeth, that I thought was very important is that the relationship in homeschooling, like the focus that we sometimes are so worried about the curriculum or the subject or the learning. And many times, instead of looking at that you're bonding with your children. Mm-hmm. And your children are bonding with each other, and even with the husband and dad, because he's away working, but when he's home, then they get to be with him. Like Sue was saying that she started homeschooling also because of that, right, Sue? That the husband was, his schedule was different, and they went to school, then they will not see him as much, and so that's another thing to look at as a family, that union. And also one thing that I remember our priest always told me when I got married is like, to really believe and have that faith that God has given each one of us as moms, as parents, the gift of the Holy Spirit to know what is best for your child, not for the neighbor child, not comparing for the neighbor, but for your child. So many times we'll be doubtful, but to really have that peace and that trust that whatever you decide to do, that God is giving you the grace because you're the best one to know what's best for your child. So I think that will give a lot of peace to moms in that. So let me see if there's any more questions before we finished.
Yeah, one of the reasons we wrote the book, I think for me especially, is there's a lot of great homeschooling books out there that have done an excellent job of explaining the beauty of the homeschooling lifestyle and all of the different methods and ways of homeschooling. But what we saw there was a need was for somebody to just write a book that was just to kind of hold the hand of the person who was just taking those initial steps. And so our book is really just those very first concrete, super practical steps that anybody can follow to kind of get on the right path. And then we hope to point you in the direction of all the other wonderful things that you can go and learn about and implement in your homeschool based on your own personality and your kids and your family's needs and that kind of thing. So just sometimes the first step is the hardest to take. That sometimes seems the most overwhelming. And I think our book hopefully gives you, in a pretty concise, you can almost sit down and read the book in one sitting, just a really concrete steps that you can take. And we meant it, like you could take them today to get started. And sometimes just that initial, like, it's kind of like inertia, right? You kind of get going and then it leads you to the next thing, and then the next and the next thing, and the doors open and you're on the right path at that point. So that's what we had hoped for in writing the book. So were there any more questions?
I believe something, another one, what can, well, one guy is asking is, what curriculum do you use when you're homeschooling? But I think we're talking about the curriculums, and there's so many curriculums, but I know they're asking you particularly what you used.
Oh, particularly?
Okay.
I'm not sure they're asking that question, but I think in the back of the book, like you were saying, there's many. Yeah, it's like one thing is like first deciding to homeschool, and then when you decide to homeschool, there's so much out there. It's incredible how much there's out there, and it's good because you can really see what's best for your child. And like Sue was saying, that she will pick different books from different curriculums for their child, because each child is different. Each child learns differently. So there's a beauty of homeschooling. You can always say, okay, for this child, this is good for him. For this other child, this might be good for them. But also one thing that I learned a lot from you both, that also the mom, what is the mom actually like, or was the mom going to be in peace with? Because maybe the child loves that book, but the mom has no idea. Maybe it's going to be more stress for the mom, so that stress goes to the child. So kind of like work it out together, right? So I think that's important that you were in the book. But one thing I also think that is just another question that I'm thinking for moms who are watching, who have homeschooled before or are homeschooling, but now with this pandemic, with the COVID-19, is going to be different, because they can't do the same activities outside. They can't do all the things are normal, even for the ones who are going back to school. If they go back to school, if the parents think that's best for their kids, it's still going to be different because of the COVID. So what do you suggest to all these parents, homeschooling or not homeschooling, or doing the best?
Well, for those of us who are already homeschooling, life hasn't changed that much with the virus. As far as, yes, I mean, some people can't go to, like, say, soccer practice or whatever. There might be some things that would be off limits, but we still go hiking, we still go canoeing, we still, get out as a family and go for walks. We still do those type of things together. So our life hasn't changed that much. Now, if you're into some organized sports and stuff, then your life has probably changed. But I see a lot of families out walking and riding bikes together and doing things. I'm like, wow, this is kind of neat in a way. You just don't see that normally. You don't see normally a whole family out taking a walk, and now you do. So there's some good things that are coming out of this, I think, as far as family, activities together as a family.
Right, as we were talking the other day of how to look at this in a very positive way and take the best out of this pandemic, homeschooling or not homeschooling, but to take the best out of this. And maybe you can give us some word also, Elizabeth, regarding this.
Yeah, I was thinking, and especially praying, that I hope that in all of this, that families really discover, like, their own identity. They have this time all together, and maybe they can just kind of, maybe they already have come up with a lot of projects or things that they wanted to do, maybe even a bucket list kind of thing, as a family. Like, all of a sudden our schedule's pretty empty. We can eat dinner together every night, or most nights, that we couldn't do before because of all the different activities that we were involved in. Or, we're sad that we can't go to youth group, but what could we do as a family? And maybe this is the year for you to really think outside the box and do the things that you've always put on the back burner because you never had quite enough time or energy to put into those projects as a family. And maybe sit down all together, especially I think if you have teenagers. They're going through difficulties, and like we all are, in being away from friends and maybe being away from extended family and activities. But instead of focusing on what you've lost, maybe focus on all of this time that you've gained together and what you might do. There's it's endless opportunities right now for what you might do as a family. And then whether you end up homeschooling for the long run or you end up going back to school, I would love to see families go back, into whatever the new normal of life will look like, with just this new love for their own family and their identity as, this is who we are. This is what we do. You know, it looks different than the guys next door. But this is what we do and how we do things. And maybe that means that when you go back, you know, you do try to have dinner together a little bit more often, or you try to continue some of the traditions that you started, you know, some crazy, quirky quarantine projects that you got going. You continue them into, you know, life beyond, back into the normal days, maybe once kids are going back to school. Or if you decide to keep homeschooling, you know, you're you're kind of creating this new family life that you can really dive into, and God has given you the time to do that right now. You know, like maybe you're even getting a little more time to rest. A lot of moms and dads driving from here to there on all different activities and all over town. We've all been stretched, you know, in parenthood, and sometimes I think with the quarantine and with a lot of the activities being canceled, we just have a chance to just sort of take a deep breath and go, okay, wow, maybe the kids are a little bored, but this might actually be a good thing. We can maybe make something really great of it for our family. So that's my prayer for everybody. I hope it happens. I know for my family, we thought eventually, you know, a year or 2, 3 down the road, we might, you know, do some kind of farm animal activities and that kind of thing. And we've just done it all this year. Like everything we thought we might do in 5 years, we've done it this year. And it's been crazy, like truly crazy. But we've learned so much, and we're doing this all together, and it's exciting. And we're home all the time, so we can deal with animals, you know. So that's been our thing.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That's true. Thank you.
Yeah.
Before we finish, I know we have to go, but I know we can just answer one more question before we go. And if we can't answer other questions, please, you can go back to Facebook, and we'll try to answer your questions. And if not as well, Elizabeth and Sue, you can reach them in Instagram at Instagram homeschool how-to. So you can always as well ask them any questions you might have, how to start, things like that. And as well, like they were saying, look for communities for homeschooling, and that way they can help you as well. Okay, but I believe there's just one more question. It says, so I'm concerned that my daughter only has me to learn from and no peers, because my husband will be also my husband will be working from home, but it will be only her. And so she's like, well, there will be no peers. So she's worried about that.
Okay, that's where good homeschool friends and a good homeschool group come in. Right. You have to meet other people who are in the same situation with flexibility during the week, and find opportunities. You know, now that I'm down to my last high schooler, she spends time with her friends. We have to schedule that into our day, that she can go and do things with her friends, you know, create things to do. Elizabeth?
Yeah, I think everybody's in the same boat, right? Whether you're at school, doing school from a distance with public or private schools, or whether you're homeschooling, you know, coming up with ways to connect with other people. You know, we're bodily people, and we need to see each other in person. The screen just doesn't cut it. And so, you know, maybe there's some park play dates out in the sunshine and the fresh air that your homeschool group might be doing, or something like that, that you can see other people and make some friends. Maybe you can get together with one other family, you know, on a regular basis, and that can kind of become part of your tribe, you know, that you're with, and you're kind of in this together. I know we've done that with some families that we've been seeing, and having game nights and that kind of thing with a variety of ages of kids. And because as parents, we need to connect with other people, and so do our kids. We love being together, but sometimes staring at the same 4 walls and all the same people in the same room, you're starting to go a little stir crazy. So I think reaching out to others is a great way to do that. And when I know for my kids, as far as learning with education, when we've done a few classes online in the high school years, it's made a huge difference. We haven't done co-ops and that kind of thing, just because it hasn't worked for our family lifestyle and kind of the way we like to do our schedule. But when they've taken some classes, particularly on something called Homeschool Connections, and they've also done a couple of classes at the community college, it gives us some new perspectives, some things to talk about. You know, they get another professor, another teacher who's teaching them and giving them funny stories and different skills and set of expertise that I don't have, that we get to all talk about it together. I try to make a habit of maybe talking about something at lunch or at dinner, like, hey, what was on your lecture today, online? What was the funny, some professors have a funny story they tell every week or something like that. Just try to bring in whatever the subject is to the family life. And that just adds another dynamic. It's kind of another layer to their education, but also really for the whole family. And it is kind of nice to have the outside influence. I mean, we don't want to be homeschooling in a little bubble where our kids never get to learn from anybody else, or our kids never get to be with other friends or other kids. That's not what we want at all. We want just really, we want really great friendships, and we want really great professors, and we want the best education for our kids. And we know that we don't particularly have everything that they need, but we know how to get it. We know there's resources out there, and there's all kinds of possibilities that maybe you don't even know about at this moment, but you can learn about it, and God will provide along the way what you need for your particular situation and your kids. So you're not alone, and you shouldn't be homeschooling alone ever. Don't homeschool on an island, right? You're going to be miserable. Your kids are going to be miserable. Form a really solid family life, but then know that you need other families along with you. That's a really key.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And you're right. It's to think that we're not alone, that we're together. And that's one thing when I started homeschooling, I love the community. I was so impressed by the charity. I was just going to we were moving. And one of my friends said, well, just get into this group, homeschooling group, and they'll help you. I'm like, well, I don't know the group. Like, I don't even homeschool yet. I'm thinking about it. And it's like, well, just join and tell them that you're moving and they'll help you. I'm like, okay. So I did that. And the next day, believe me or not, I have people outside my door knocking, a little file of people in my door saying, we're here to help you move out. And I was like, I don't have anything. I haven't packed. I don't have boxes. I don't have anything. Like, oh, we'll bring everything to you. And I was really impressed. And even I want to thank Fanny that she's doing the moderator right now. She was the one that brought her little baby. She was carrying her baby here. And then the other two came along and helped me out packing. And they were elementary at that age. And they were helping me packing. And then at the end where we're moving the truck, later on I was, oh, where's Fanny? I don't see her. And then the husband said to me, oh, well, she went to get you some dinner for your family. And I was like, what? Dinner for my family? So I was really impressed how right away there's a community try to help. You're not by yourself. In other words, you really help. And look, wherever you lived, we're living in Texas, there's still co-ops going on, even with the COVID. You can look, there's some, and that might help you. Like Elizabeth said, it did not help her family, but maybe for other families, it might help them. And also there's other activities going on here that are happening when you're join the groups. They will tell you there's playrooms, play game, different things that are going on. And believe me, like Elizabeth says, and Sue, you have to say no many times because there's so many things going on. Maybe right now with the COVID might be less, but you can still do things and with friends. So I want to thank Sue, Elizabeth, and Sue for being here with us. Thank you so much. And thank you for taking your time and for homeschooling. And at the beginning, I didn't say this, but Sue has an MBA on marketing. I'm sorry, not on marketing, but management. And she left a high flying career to homeschool her kids and have 7 great kids. And Elizabeth Herbaker has 5 kids, and one is just potty trained. And the little one, the oldest, is in the Air Force at this moment. And she's a BA in speech, special education as well. But she said that she has learned that more at her house. I believe in her book, she was saying that. So thank you so much. And just one thing, you can get a free book. And if not, you can order on Amazon. And the free book, you have to have 3 things to do. One is just put a like in A.R.T Domine Facebook page. The other one is to follow Elizabeth and Sue on Instagram. And that's Homeschool How-To in Instagram. And the third thing is just make a comment. If you made a comment now, then you're able to get your free book. We'll be shipping it free for you. So thank you so much. And again, any other questions, please feel free to write them down or to go to Instagram. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much.
For everyone being involved, God bless. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.